Hi everyone and welcome. Today I'll be talking about all the books that I managed to finish in July. Although 2 of the 5 books that I will be talking about I actually finished in the start of August, nobody cares about that. Now, of the 5 books that I did finish, 2 of those were sci-fi, and that was a hit or miss because one I severely disliked, one I absolutely adored. It can go either way when I'm reading sci-fi, I suppose. The 3 other were adult fantasy. Now, 4 of the books that I managed to finish were physical reads that I also own, and one of them was an audiobook that I do not own yet, but I do hope to acquire it in the future because I really enjoyed my time with that. I would also like to mention that the 5 books that I did read was for GameNightAthon, which is hosted by Clio at the Bemused Bookworm, and I will link her booktube channel down below. She is hosting another one of those readathons in December, and I must say that I found it just extremely fun, and this was the reason that I fell in love with reading again almost, and it's one of the major reasons that I started to upload again, just because it made me realize what an amazing community this is. So if you want to join the 2nd edition of GameNightAthon in December, definitely go and follow Clio. Now, without further ado, let's just go over the books in a chronological order, starting from the first one that I finished to the last one. And the first one was The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman. This was one that I read physically and I absolutely adored it. This is of course a standalone, and I must say that I am currently making my list of my all-time favorite standalone fantasy novels to combine in a video, and I'm going back and forth if I can add this one to the list already because I read it so recently, but yeah, it's just a great book. It's a very short novel. This is the 2nd book by Neil Gaiman that I have read. I read Stardust last year. I actually have a spoiler-free vlog for that one, where I read and also watched the movie Stardust, which I really enjoyed. That was more traditional fantasy, or fantasy that when you think of fantasy, that's what you think of. It's a portal fantasy of a man who goes in search of a star in this magical land. There are pirates in flying ships, there are witches, he's going on this quest. It's much more your traditional type of fantasy, while this is more urban fantasy of a man, I think that he's middle-aged, and he just returned from a funeral. So he's just driving around aimlessly, he doesn't really know where he's going, until all of a sudden he is in his childhood neighborhood. And more specifically, he is in the house of his neighbors where he had a childhood friend. Now, they have a pond, and when they were younger they called it the ocean, so that's why it's called, of course, the ocean at the end of the lane. Now, when he is at this pond, he starts remembering things of his childhood, and it's almost a little bit of magical realism where it feels like it couldn't be happening. It's a little bit supernatural, but he starts remembering anyway. And I absolutely adore this one. I do know that I like Neil Gaiman's writing style when he writes fantasy, of course, only judging by Stardust and this one, but yeah, I really enjoyed it. It's a very short book. It's one that you can read easily over a weekend or even in a day if you're a fast reader. And it's something that will leave a lasting impression. It's also very thematic in terms of, there are some themes of childhood trauma that you can find in this book. And just one that I would highly recommend. I loved the ending. It's a little bit bittersweet almost, but it fit this story perfectly. So yes, one that really set off the month right. And I was very excited to continue reading in July because of this one. Now, the 2nd one that I finished in July, well, that was that sci-fi book that I didn't like at all, and that's The Martian by Andy Weir. Now, I actually have it, but it's on the top of my bookshelves downstairs, and I couldn't reach it, but here it is. And I thought that I would like it a lot, because I watched the movie The Martian a couple of years ago. I barely remembered anything, but I remembered liking that movie, so why not read the book? Now, normally that's an issue, because when I know what happens plot-wise, I am just not invested, but because I didn't really remember anything, I thought, well, this is going to be fine. And in terms of plot, I didn't remember anything, so that was fine, but I just really disliked the main narrator, actually, the main character. Yeah, he's funny. He's that funny guy. Basically, The Martian, I think that everybody knows this. We have this astronaut who gets stranded on Mars, and then he needs to survive until they send a new rescue mission, but that takes at least a year, I think between 1 and 2 years, so he needs to be able to, maybe it's even 4 years. This is how well I remember the book. He needs to survive for a prolonged period of time on Mars, and that's why he is the Martian. Now, no, this is told via diary entries, which is something that I usually like a lot. I liked it in Piranesi. There are definitely some other books as well, because it's basically somebody telling you their life story. And I like that as a narrative device. However, here, because the main character has such a very strong personal voice, and I think that some people might like it, if you don't like that character, and if you don't like how he laughs almost with everything, you will be annoyed very quickly on. He reminded me of Wayne of Mistborn Era 2, and I absolutely dislike that character. It's probably my most disliked character in terms of, he's not a bad guy, he just annoys me to no end, and this character did the same thing. I also think that Andy Weir is just somebody who likes to explain science, and I have heard before that the science in this book is exactly as it should be, and that if you understand that, of course that's pretty neat. However, I don't understand that, so you could basically tell me anything and I have to go, yeah, I guess. So if you explain to me over 5 pages how you're going to extract water from this device and then that means that you can survive for another couple of months, it's fine, but you don't have to explain that to me, and you especially don't have to explain that to me 10 times for 10 different problems. I also felt like if you tell me from the start, either I fix this or I die, or either this works or I die, and I'm, well, 100 pages into a 400-page book, I'm guessing you will fix it and it will work, so there's no tension there. And I felt that that was often the case. It's either this will work, this plan that I have, or I die. Well, maybe just say this either works or I have a very complicated mission ahead of me, something like that. Just everything that happened here I did not like. There were some parts in the story that I liked more because of something that I cannot say because that would be spoilers, but they were so far and in between that it was not enough to make me like the book. In the end I finished it and I'm sad that I did, because I could finish more books that I enjoyed more if I did not put my time into this one. But it happened, I gave it a try. The Martian was one of those books that I definitely wanted to try because I thought that Andy Weir might be the sci-fi author for me. Apparently it's not, so I can just move on with my life without having to bother giving another Andy Weir book a chance. So at least there's that. And then I finished that other sci-fi book that worked for me perfectly. I absolutely adored this one, and that was Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler. Now I have heard before that Octavia E. Butler is of course a fantasy name or a sci-fi name to reckon with, and somebody that you need to have given a try. I'm so happy that I finally did so and that it actually worked out for me. This is of course a post-apocalyptic novel. It's the first one in the Earthseed duology, where we follow a main character who has hyper empathy almost. So when she sees somebody in pain, she feels that pain herself, which of course in a post-apocalyptic world where it's the law of the strongest, this is almost seen as a, well, this is seen as a disadvantage, and in a number of occurrences it is a disadvantage. But you follow her, she's one of the lucky ones almost, because she lives in a community with her family. But you can see that the situation grows more dire as her diary entries progress. And this is something that, like I said, in The Martian it doesn't work, but in this one I absolutely adored that you follow this character through diary entries. There are a lot of themes that you follow and explore here as well. How humanity can survive in a world that is very egocentrical almost, where, like I said, it's the law of the strongest and the strongest survive, and you almost have to be a very selfish person to be able to survive. How does humanity deal with that? How does religion almost evolve in a world like that? I really enjoyed that, but apart from that, you feel for the main character and you can connect with her, and that is something that I always try to find in novels, and when I don't have that connection I dislike it. So that I liked it here was something that I was extremely relieved about, but also very happy, because that means that I can read more Octavia E. Butler novels in the future. I do think that if you like this one, people have told me that you will like others as well, but of course first I will read the sequel, Parable of the Talents, and then continue from there on. I think that Kindred is another one by her that I definitely want to give a try. But if you like stories that deal with these themes, especially if you like post-apocalyptic, which is sci-fi but it's not sci-fi like The Martian or anything like that, then I would definitely advise you to give this one a try. And then I read another very strange story almost, and that is The Spirit Cuts Through Water by Simon Jimenez. This is another very unique book that I almost can't compare to anything else, but I liked it, even though it has some things that I normally don't like. This is very strong in exploring themes, and it's very whimsical, almost dreamy story. It's very mythical, and it doesn't really follows the characters very closely. You don't really feel that connected to the characters. It's almost as you're following them from a distance. But then there are certain points in time or certain occurrences that happen where you feel very connected. So it's almost strange like that, and you can see that the author did that very deliberately. This also has very unique narrative device where you are following a story within a story within a story almost. Basically, in the beginning you meet a character who is living in our present time in the new country, but her no-not tells her about the old country. And at a certain point she dreams about this theater where a myth of the old country is being told. And that is the main story that you follow. In this old country we have the emperor, and he is a terror. He is very bad to his people, and actually his 3 sons are called the Terrors. They have powers, supernatural powers, almost godlike powers, because they have kept a god prisoner in their castle. But this god escapes, and you are following 2 young men who somehow get enwrapped in this story. Absolutely adored it, like I said, although it has some very hard-hitting moments. I like the writing style almost most of all, and I do like myth retelling, so this almost feeling like it's an original myth, I like that one. This is one that I have to think about a little bit more, and again, like with The Ocean at the End of the Lane, this is a standalone that I really enjoyed, and I'm going back and forth if this is a favorite of all time, but I need to give it a little bit of time, because this one, when I finished it, it took me a while, but it was so unique that I think I will keep thinking about this for a long while, and I guess that says something. So Simon Geminis is another author that I want to try something else by. I do want to try The Vanished Birds, even though that's sci-fi, and even though I have heard that it's very different from this one, and this one is also very different from what I normally read when it comes to fantasy, so I want to give it a try, but we will see if I actually like it, or if this was a one-time hit, basically. By the way, if you see me dissolving in front of the camera, it is very hot and humid here upstairs, and I should have been smart and done an updo, because that would have been a lot cooler, but I didn't do that. And I have one more book to talk about, so let's just roll with it. And that is Hellbent by Leigh Bardugo. This is of course the sequel to Ninth House, which I read last year in October. That's a dark academia novel. It's a little bit outside of my comfort zone, and I absolutely adored it at the time. Now at the time I thought that I liked it because it was a little bit different, it was a little bit of a palette cleanser, and that was nice in between of these heavy tones. However, now I thought, well, maybe it's going to be more of the same thing. Maybe I'm not going to be as invested in the sequel, and that's something that I'm often scared of or afraid or nervous, because it did something right once, but if it's so far out of my comfort zone, am I going to like the second one, or did I just like it because it was something new? Luckily, I liked Hellbent a lot. This was the only audiobook that I listened to in the month of August, and I don't own so yet, but I am going to acquire it because I really enjoyed it, and I do hope that the third and final book of this trilogy will be out soon. In the first one we follow Galaxy, in the second one we also follow Galaxy, and she is now a student in Yale. However, she is not the typical Yale student. She has a very troubled past, and you know, or you learn more about that past in the first novel, but also in the second one. But they need something of her. Basically, all of these secret societies in Yale, they have a lot of prestige and a lot of money because they deal with supernatural. And Galaxy, she can see dead people. So, one on one, they decide to give her the scholarship if she helps them out. And of course, in the first one, you have a lot of trouble that ensues, and towards the end you have somewhat of a closure, but also a very big problem that remains, and this is something that she tries to solve in this second one. Now you also have some new characters that you get to know more, and I just really like that troubled main character. I like getting to know more about her past. I liked that she was multi-layered almost. She was not the typical Yale student, but you come to care for her anyway because she tries to do the right thing. And I really like those side characters that you get to know more in the second one. I was also very invested in the mystery and in how she was going to solve this, which is also something that sometimes you have a first book and you have that mystery, and that mystery is really good. And yes, this is what a mystery should be. And then the author tries to prolong that in a sequel or in just the next installment, where the same main characters try to solve another mystery, but you can see that they almost ran out of new ideas, so the second mystery is not as good. I did not feel that way in this one. I think that Hellbent was even maybe more my cup of tea than Ninth House, so that means that I'm very excited for the third and final one, and I'm so happy that I actually enjoyed this one and that I got to listen to it on audiobook because the narrators were really good. We had 2 narrators, and the second one, he jumps in basically towards the end, which was a really nice surprise, and yeah, one that I really enjoyed. Now, I will also say that I started an audiobook, but I did not have the time to finish it because my hold at the library, well, I did not finish it in time. And that is The Dragonbone Chair by Tad Williams. This is of course very epic fantasy. I'm not that far in, but I will say that I will try to continue in the next couple of months because I'm still now waiting in line again. I think that I got maybe 1/3 of the way through. It is a very thick book, and for this entire series I will have to see what I do in the future because that third and final book is, I think, 68 hours long on audiobook, and I will definitely not finish that in the 14-day time span that I get from the library, and the wait is pretty long for these books. So we will see, but if you were wondering if I am reading Memory, Sorrow and Thorn, if I want to give Tad Williams a try, yes, and at this point in time I'm really enjoying it. I think at the start felt a little bit younger because our main character Simon is also a little bit younger, and this is an extremely slow book. I like slow books. I like Robin Hobb. A lot of people say that she writes very slow and boring books. I don't mind. This book and the start of this book was extremely slow. However, I did really enjoy it because the writing style was good, and I have also heard that this serves a purpose and that the story does pick up afterwards. And I think that now I had to stop because my hold was finished at the point where the story starts picking up. So I'm very excited to hopefully get back in front of the line somewhere in September. So that's one that I also listened to, but I was not able to finish. So those were all of the books that I read in July. Please let me know what you have been reading, if you had a hit or a miss, if you had to DNF unfortunately, or if you found a new favorite. Let me know in the comments down below. If you want to see which books I am planning to read in August, and I'm already a little bit through this TBR, so I'm very happy that I can say that I finished the majority of these books already. You can find my August TBR right here. As always, I hope that you enjoyed this video and see you next time. Bye!